Greetings and salutations, audience members. Hello and namaste. It's a Thursday, April 22nd, 9:21 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Happy Earth Day! Do you celebrate? Do you think of Earth as a collection of inanimate objects? Or do you know her as a Pachamama? Or one of her other various indigenous feminine goddess names? Huh? On today's episode, we kick off a new, kind of already reimagined, evolved, rebooted gimmick, the 90-day sketch-a-thon challenge. Greetings! Welcome! Hello, 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 hello! It is I, your ever-eccentric, autodidactic, self-taught, self-motivated, sometimes a little self-delusional, humble, ever-humble host, the Incorrigible Mr Zeppo. I'm here with myself, and in some future version, also me and I, but that's probably not available yet. If you don't know what I mean, don't worry, that'll all eventually make sense. Probably not for another year or two, but, one step at a time, folks. Hello, and welcome to today's sort of bonus, kicking off the day with a bonus promotion episode, promotional episode, an earnest and sincere sharing. It's my audio blog, freeform talk show style podcast, and I can do what I wanna. And what I want to do, friends, hopefully for your entertainment, is share with you about a personal challenge that I'm taking on. You know how the internet does, this whole spectrum of internet challenges. It's its own cultural motif, and sometimes I'm dumbstruck at what they are and how they totally have nothing to do with anything, and yet we do them, and somehow that motivates fundraising. Huzzah. Never really understood dumping a bucket of ice water on yourself for the purposes of fundraising, other than it gives you a bit of silly and ridiculous and what's the word? There's a word in comedy. Not a self-aggrandizing, that's the opposite. Error, file not found. At any rate, I get that, but I don't know, I guess I do get it. But I've never done any of the challenges. Not that I don't believe in supporting causes. I'm just also, I think you can support a cause and not do a silly thing that in no way directly, karmically, spiritually, kinetically, metaphysically, quantum mechanically has anything to do with the problem at hand. You know what I mean? Like if I'm going to do a weird internet challenge to help end hunger or help stop X, Y, and Z, like let's end Asian hate with some internet challenge. I'm not going to dump a bucket of ice water on my head to stop Asian hate. Like, I'm going to love my Asian friends and neighbors and strangers on the street and, not to be accused, and I probably will be, not to be accused of virtue signaling, but, it's the little things that count and that matter. And I had a genuine and sincere real life moment. And we'll get back to the 90-day doodle challenge in just a second. It's the 90-day sketch-a-thon challenge featuring the almost daily doodle. I didn't put that in the graphic because I didn't want to make it too busy. But then I forgot to put it in the blurb part of the text. But there will be an almost daily doodle live stream because, and you don't want to listen to me sketch, you want to watch me sketch. But stay tuned. Okay, so in the vein of Stop Asian Hate, there's the question of like, well, what can we do? What can someone who doesn't feel like they hate Asian people do to stop Asian hate? Like, some who are woefully lacking in imagination might excuse themselves from any social engagement by simply saying, I don't feel any hate towards anybody. I bear no responsibility here. And that, I guess, in some maximal freedom sense, okay, fine. Go stand on the sidelines. Wait till they come for you. I also can't really judge that. I've certainly felt unqualified in circumstances. But recently, in the last 72 hours or so, whilst absent-mindedly focused on my own artistic, eccentric objectives and not really paying attention to the world around me, I encountered one of those almost archetypical examples, right? I'm in, and don't nobody sue me for bringing up brand names. I think I'm allowed to reference, this is stand-up comedy. Ha 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 ha. Insert laugh track here. So I'm in a depot home, right? Gonna get me some of those refurbishment of my dwellings type supplies because, sidebar, I'm kind of a do-it-myself handy guy. Especially if I had tools, I would build more things because I'd rather build a thing than buy it. Quite honestly, I'd rather build it and then spend a few weeks getting craftsy on its ass, like it was a thing we were building for a show in the crafts department or in the props department or in the carpentry department, because I have worn those hats as an overhire in some venue or another, or in some free volunteer project or another, throughout my entire theater life, both professional and there's three spectrums of my theater life, three levels of it, bandwidths at which it's operated. The legit professional, some company paid me to do the work and to be there. The amateur, no one was paying me, but I brought professional level skill sets to the work at hand because I loved the show, because my sense of duty to the small amateur company, etc., and all the stuff I did under the banner of being a student, which a good portion of which for me was I felt at an acceptable, that's professional quality level, because I had walked away from my schooling and come back and redid it all and then did a bunch of new shows and stuff, and I'd gone and lived in the world for a bit and I think elevated myself. But I digress. I'm not trying to brag, flex about my education. I think I had a pretty good one. And oh my God, the things I could, should, would do if I owned a proper home, minimal, not overkill wood shop in one corner of my garage. Because I've got the basic skills. I'm not a mad genius. I'll still make mistakes. If I go and build something for myself, the more complex it gets, the more likely I'm going to mess it up, right? And I know where I'm at, and I know what my skill set is. And here's where we get to Stop Asian Hate. I'm in a depot home in their outdoor yard lumber, and I round the corner at the end of a long, very empty aisle full of nothing but stock lumber pieces. And there's a pair of people. There's two young ladies. I don't know how old they were, but they didn't seem elderly in any way. So two young ladies waiting at for what for some people is a very intimidating piece of equipment. I'm not sure, it's not the bandsaw, which is very scary for folks and can be very dangerous. Asterisks, all safety provisions that come from like any professional industry apply when it comes to like, do it yourself anecdotes and stories of like cutting things and building stuff. Please don't try dumb things at home. Just because you heard someone, anyone, me, anyone else talking about something they did at home, make sure you study and think it through and read some professional books about it and work your way up. But I digress. Here's one of the simple little nuanced things, right? And here's I'm not trying to virtue signal. Because to me, this is like, I'm a genuinely friendly, outgoing, charismatic. I'm kind of introspective and quiet and stoic at the same time. But I can be chatty and I can socialize with anybody. And this is tested. I can chit chat and make conversation about anything with any human being from anywhere and from any sentient, ambulatory, talking life vessel from anywhere, barring they're not too threatening looking and trying to eat me. I can socialize. And I know that sounds like a weird thing to say when I'm talking about Asian hate, but there's a broader perspective that wherein sci-fi tries to bring us some insight. But put a pin in that, we'll come back to it. Here it is, real life, planet Dirt. I'm in the depot home. Around the corner, the whatchamahoozle saw. It's not the bandsaw. It's another thing. It's the big machine where you lay down the planks of wood, and the spinning circular saw moves forward in a straight line. Not the kind that comes down. I like those a little bit better. The kind where you like it sort of like comes down and then moves. This one just straight across. There's a name for it. I forget what it's called. And I think during this, seasonal time of underemployment, because of all the varying conflicting issues, they're a little understaffed at this particular depot home, store of remodeling and other, yourself do it things. And these ladies turn to me with an apprehensive look in their eyes. And I'm a big facial expression reader. I think both by nature and by training, in large part because, and we can go on a great tangent about how weird this is, but I was a semi-professional theatrical, I say professional, but we weren't getting paid. We were like doing grad level theater work and with the sort of pipe dream of taking off and becoming professionals at what we do. You've heard me talk about it before. But that's not the point here. Body language and especially, as I've talked recently, facial expression language can be a really subtle thing and can be totally lost on people, especially if they don't practice it. And there are people whose lives are spent, and I'm not judging or criticizing, I'm just pointing it out because I think we lack awareness about this. People's lives are spent sort of not putting any attention on basic body language and especially the eyes. The eyes are so expressive. And our brains have built-in capacity to do that. But if we don't register it consciously, if we don't take that information into account, if we don't attune into it and learn from our like conscious personality perspective how to tune into that and understand it, it's information that just is part of the background noise of everything that's going on. The way some people can't hear the forklift in the store beeping towards them, when you're in a giant big box store and they've got one of those little forklifty things and it's like humming at you and it makes a weird, funny buzzing sound that shouldn't sound like anything else in a big box store. And they're usually got the little safety beep going, reep, 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 right? Like some people, because of the way that they either absentmindedly or by choice live in their internal space, right? It's not something about the way they talk. It's not something about the way they move. It's about the way they live inside their head. They just don't pick up on that information until it's way too late. It's got to be like, it's almost got to be spoon-fed to them. And I'm not trying to be judgmental about that. That's just the way some people are. those people, if they realize that about themselves, are strongly encouraged to maybe train themselves and exercise, practice in other things. That all being said, I'm really attuned. A, because of theater. And here's how that works. In theater, mimicry, the body language is a huge thing, right? And in comedy especially. And being able to read improv, it's all about reading and understanding lightning fast, the way a dancer can anticipate adjustments and improvised variations on dance maneuvers faster than any sentence-making procedure can render an explanation about it in such a mysterious way that, like, if you read about it, like, quantum mechanical scientists are like, we don't know what the fuck is going on when dancers are dancing, because when you measure it against time, like, they appear to be making decisions about stuff that they can't be ready to make the decisions before they get there, but they're making it faster than the human body is able to relay the information back and forth between sensory inputs and motor outputs, right? Like, it's crazy. But I digress. When these ladies, having said all that, right, like, there's a part of my mind that continues to operate in the theater mode, in part to stay sharp, in part because we all, I think, depending on the school, depending on the practice, a lot of us theater students, we become a sort of a meta method where we're always sort of tuning into our environment and exploring theoretically in our heads how we might play in the theatrical sense, how we might play with the moment, play with the scene, play with the timing of the conversation that's going on, etc., and how we might respond, right? And all of our natural faculties that deal with social settings are heightened and are part of this and become engaged in this process. And I've preserved that. It's part of my persona. That's what I call Mr. Zeppo. There's like, inside of me, there's like a function, a biological mental energy function that is so intense that I kind of want to call it a separate name from me. And I call it Mr. Zeppo. It's one of my inner, alternate personalities, not in a schizophrenic way, although, we shouldn't judge problematic mental functioning that way, but it's neither here nor there. The point is, Mr. Zeppo loves it when something comes up, and his skill set can be used, and it's why this all relates to all the other projects and stuff, but here in this moment, to not sound like I'm losing track, this moment, I preempted all that. I rambled like that because I wanted to describe this moment and have it actually make sense. There are times when my spidey senses, my theatrical spidey senses kick in, and time sort of dilates. And there's different diameters, I guess, is one way of describing that. The time might dilate. But that means that, like, I feel like you might in a superhero movie where suddenly, like, let us take DC Comics Justice League, when Lightning Boy, sorry, I'm terrible at people's names, but it doesn't matter if they're real people's names or characters' names, I can't remember. And it's not disrespect. But when Mr. Speed, Flash, is it Flash Gordon? That's not Flash Gordon. Flash Gordon's a different property, and he flies around in space, but he also wears a lightning on his chest. When the Flash, I think, depending on which universe you're in, when the Flash stir, that's from Planet Granite, the Flash stir. Everyone's the something stir, or like, Gambarino, Pino. Anyways, too many tangents there. When the Flash goes really fast, everybody else around him slows down, right? There's in a much more human, realistic, limited, constrained reality, there's a way, it's part of being in the zone, that artistic faculties, athletic, physical faculties can kick in, and we start processing data more acutely, more dynamically, more fast, and with a specific focus. In that moment, because I was sort of surprised, and I was in my own, headspace, being very creative and visualizing things and in an artsy space, which naturally activates any of my theatery stuff. And I saw these two ladies and read their body language as they turned with this look of not dread, but social anxiety, anticipation, and lack of clarity. Like they did not know what was about to happen, and they were, like on high alert. And their body language was a little bit defensive. And the simplest of things, right? Like I conveyed in as polite and as simple a way as possible without trying to invade their space or trying to butt in on their conversation. Because they were, I heard them before I saw them. So I wasn't that surprised. I just sort of like, I conveyed friendliness and openness and like, I'm just one of you guys waiting in line. And then I tried to be helpful because there was no one there attending the intimidating machine that no one, even people who are qualified and certified to use it, can just walk up and just start using it. Although I wish we lived in that universe. As dangerous and as a not logistical, what's the word? Litigious is one way I could say it. As a litigious nightmare, it would be. I'd love for there to be a crafts and artisan woodworking shop store where I could go in and not have to buy myself all the gear that I would love to stock in my garage, because I don't do enough of that work. And though I might dream of wanting to do so much more, who the fuck really has the time? But for when I really decide, like I did this weekend or whatever ago, that I really needed to build a hutch for my desk so I could just be more useful and have more surface, that I can go in and instead of wait for someone to come around and do the job for me, that I could just be like, boom, sign, pay a minor fee, not too crazy, just something to make it like, this is affordable. It's cheaper than buying the finished product from a store, but it's just competition to other products because it's still within that range. And I get to have built it myself. But the dangerous part of like cutting it and sanding it and all that stuff that requires for the finer work, the really heavier machinery that I would love to own, but I don't want to have to try to figure out how to afford in my life and space wise in my garage. So I can just go, anyways, that'd be great. But I spun out of control there. What the world needs now in regards to issues like ending Asian hate and in general, like ending public conflict, is conscious use of energy and being gentle and kind and helpful with each other in public. That's it, right? Like, it's not that hard. It obviously gets more complicated when someone is, quote, having a bad day or out to cause trouble, etc. Or having, a serious mental crisis and on the verge of or already in a place where they're not actually even aware of their own actions. But that's a whole nother level. I mean, in terms of there really is such a thing as like the fabric of society, the glue to society. And it's the little things. It's the eye contact, man. So that people know the eye contact with the conscious and authentic, like welcoming, that can only come from choosing to genuinely feel that. And people will argue, well, you can't fake it. Like, then you can kind of fake it till you make it. You can consciously choose to be nice. And there's a lot of poo-pooing about politeness in the world. And there's a lot of poo-pooing of political correctness. But, I mean, in a world where egregious public acts of bullying against minorities in general, and specifically in this particular chapter, seemingly a spike in Asian people being harassed, addressed disrespectfully, in a way that's unimaginable. I mean, it's 2021, for effing Christ's sake, right? I mean, everybody should have already watched HBO's Lovecraft Country to get a really visceral, brutal, meaningful understanding of the legacy of violence that is just, a generation away, just around the corner in the past, that is resonating in a toxic way with people on both sides of this unnecessary divide. All right. Not to pontificate, not to, because, I don't think it's virtue signaling to say, hey, instead of being aloof, instead of being distant, instead of being so preoccupied with myself and self-interested and minding my own business in that detached way, I exercised a bare minimum of authentic kindness and communication skills, even in the face of social distancing and having to wear a mask. I made eye contact with these folks who looked at me like they weren't sure who I was. They didn't know if I was the guy that was there to help them. They didn't know if I was... And keep this in mind, folks. And this can be confusing until you get to know me. I look, and this is not something I'm taking pride in here. And this is not something that I'm overly self-critical about either. It's not something that I'm obsessed about. I'm just stating it as a plain point of fact. I look about as plain old ordinary white and Caucasian as you can imagine for people who don't look close enough. I have a lot of characteristics, especially my face, because I'm kind of goofy looking. I'm like Conan O'Brien. I'm of that ilk, and then I'm like, I'm no crazy fool. I know I'm not Tom Cruise. I know I'm not in that class or category or denomination of looks of what men might look like. But in terms of, do I look like a really white guy? Yeah, and it cuts in all kinds of ways, right? As I've talked about at length before, like really overtly, painfully, like unself-critically racist people have stepped up to me, taken me under their wing, and started, openly chit-chatting with me about them, the others, in words and in language and in terminologies and in ways that I'm not even going to begin to get into here. Because they assumed, here's the critical part that you need to understand. They assumed, and it's possible to project onto me, the assumption that I'm as white and therefore as nationalist and, privately but openly discriminatory about it, supremacist about it. I am, for the record, categorically not those things. I am, first off, I'm from another dimension. Technically speaking, if that dimension were this dimension, I was manufactured because I'm an artificial life simulacrant. You don't have the words because we don't. English is English, but we speak it really differently over there. So your English is not my first language. But technically, like Bender, which I think you should be familiar with from the Futurama cartoon, I was manufactured in a simulacrant manufacturing facility in Mexico. So as far as organic human terminology, my human backstory here on planet Dirt is that I am indeed an immigrant with my papers legally here, with green card and passport from Mexico. I was born there, as far as my, in human terms, and my parents were born there, and like, I'm not a North American gringo whose parents had me down there. I'm Mexican as Mexican can be, but I look and sound like Fred and Ethel Mertz's grandson, that lives out in Southern California. Okay, anyways, so one has to take that into account, right? Conversely, like, racists have assumed that I'm racist and that I belong and also welcoming of racist discourse because they all want to find each other, right? And that's an unfortunate reality in this world. And it has happened to me multiple times in my life, multiple places. And I've always let them know eventually that they're making fools of themselves because they eventually want to know where I'm from. And having not batted an eye, not blinked, not scuffed, not guffawed, not reacted, not jerked away, I let them get to the place where they inevitably feel like having sort of let their guard down and crossed over into I've said a few things that are openly racist here in public at a bar. This almost always happens to me at bars. Although some things that are clearly dog whistly and indicative of the intent have happened in supermarkets and on the street. And then some of the most blunt things have just happened straight up, like walking down the sidewalk. Often on my way to a bar. I don't go to bars anymore very much. But I digress. Conversely, the other has happened where people of color have presumed incorrectly that I am white and therefore potentially as racist as any racist white person might be. Because here's one of the things that I think, because I want to be really clear, despite my appearances and the way I sound, and whatever judgments people on either side of the aisle may make about that, this sort of happened to me. I didn't really choose it, but I adapted to it, and I stuck with it once I realized I kind of had gotten beyond the point of no return. I can't fake my own authentic, original language accent. Like, I can't sound like a Mexican from Mexico City who's just learned English. I sound like a better English speaker, and I sound than most Americans, and I sound like a worse Spanish speaker than most Mexicans. So it's always been. Oh wow, I'm rambling. I was supposed to already be onto the sketch-a-thon thing. Okay, let's wrap it up. It always saddens me and troubles me when people of color, of whatever variety or flavor, have in the past inaccurately misunderstood me for just another white dude, because despite everything I just said about the way I look, I have also suffered at the hands of prejudicial, irrational hate simply for being what I am, right? Because there was a time, perhaps from an anthropological perspective, if some sort of third party were to do a deep analysis of my life, they might assess that because I was foreign in my youth and I did have my English was broken and choppy, and I did have a weird accent, and I did speak funny, and I was awkward and didn't know how to behave. I didn't know all the tropes. I didn't know all the norms. I was like an alien from I might as well have been an alien from outer space all through school. Like, all the way through school. Like, I don't think I really pretended to have found myself until the moment I dropped out of college the first time, right? And that's what we go through in our late teens, early 20s. We're trying on all kinds of hats. And we may not acknowledge this, but we're pretending. We're trying on all kinds of hats. And the tragedy is that during that process, we as a society, as a culture of people, it takes a village to help raise newer generations. We aren't giving newer generations the advice. They're having to learn this the hard way by seeing other people fail and be haters and be racist and be bigots and be mean and spiteful to others just because of, the diversity that makes them beautiful and different and unique. There's been a lack of an effective enough message, that we need to practice. We need to practice being considerate. Kindness and compassion are not just heroic feats that only special characters in this divine farce role during character development phase. It's something that you build up, man. That was a D&D analogy for those who weren't clear. And opportunities like that, the random opportunities when you see people, and I'm speaking to natural born cis white brothers and sisters out there, especially if in your life you haven't had a lot of deep relationships with people from foreign places, from other ethnicities, from other traditions, from other backgrounds, etc. Many people, I mean, the country's been a big enough melting pot for long enough time that many people have, right? And this isn't an absolute, resolute problem all the way across the board, but it's problematic that enough people are out there that they've lived a just sheltered enough life that they maybe only, were surrounded by some representative people of color, but not enough, to make a deeper awareness of the kind of sensitivity and compassion that's appreciated, especially during times when others are choosing the opposite. And that as a community, we got to stand together and we got to unite. And that's a good way to be an ally. And I know this, and I think I can speak to this with some authority because I've experienced both ends of the spectrum, right? Too many ends of the spectrum. I've been hated on by Hispanic, Latinx, Latino youth in my youth and physically assaulted for trying to relate to them as a native-born Mexican and them not being able to conceive, to accept as conceivable, to buy into, to accept, because I didn't have the green card on me and because I didn't have a passport to prove it. They rejected in a biased way, because bias cuts in every direction, folks. Bias and racism and hate can exist anywhere and everywhere. The big problem is racist, elitist, white nationalist empire has sort of been the dominating problematic culture for a bit longer than a lot of people want to contend with. Okay, anyways, end of that rant. I hope we can all join each other, right? Because I'm not trying to be special. But we can all join each other in taking that little bit of extra, especially now, right? Everyone has been distanced and dealing with some amount of seeing less people. When you're out and about, when you're at the effing grocery store, at the Walgreens, at the whatever mart, at the convenience store of your choosing, and someone there, working there, shopping there, is other than you, don't shy away from eye contact. You don't have to fucking creep people out. And for some people, that's a really weird balancing act. But as organic opportunities arise, make eye contact. And here's a weird, trippy secret. Just smile under your freaking mask. If you want to feel less weird about it, kind of friendlily point at your mask and say, I'm smiling, or just say hi, sharing a smile at you. Be quirky and cute about it. And or when it's really appropriate. And here's, the thing that was, I thought, when I thought about it later, and here, it isn't narcissistic to reflect on your own life moments, right? The narcissism is when you reflect on them and take no accountability for what you've done and make no discernment about whether or not you did something good, neutral, meaningless, etc., etc. We were there and there was no one. I said I was going to wrap this up and I'm just going longer. This is crazy. I wanted to cut down this plank of wood, and they also wanted to cut something. And within a moment or two of having established, that I'm just a shopper like you, and smiled, and I thought about the things of like, oh, silly me, they can't see my smile. But here's the other thing: you don't have to point. It registers on your face, on and around your eyes. When a person smiles, especially when you really mean it, because and it's a choice. There's a difference between choosing to smile and then telling your face to make the smile and not, having an authentic friendliness vibe behind it. That stuff shows up in your eyes, man, and in the muscles around your eyes. So then he was like, okay, cool. And then I could tell they smiled back. And this is going to sound cheesy, but like nodding the head in a sort of, like kind of not a bow, but I don't know. Would it be considered cultural appropriation to actually bow at someone, or would it be considered respectful? Depends. That's a weird area, right? Like, we have to have some interesting public discourse. Somebody's going to write some sitcom where there's a scene about that. But ultimately, like, I did nod. I find that it's universal. Like, if I just bow with my head, hey, I'm acknowledging you and making eye contact and keeping the eye contact while I bow and making that smiling gesture. And then you sort of look away and attend to something of your own business. And you've established friendly proximity in that social distancing kind of way. I know that sounds crazy to talk about, and it's not even the theme I'm supposed to be talking about. Let's talk about what I'm supposed to be talking about after a tiny tease of music to cleanse the palate. Here's one I've been waiting to play for you. DJ Zed, are you ready? Fire it up, those digital animatronic fingers of yours, and noodle beat this. Oh no, not noodle beat. My eyes are getting blurry. Node beat this Zen tone meditation dance track for us. Take it away, DJ Zed. Oh, Object Strike Foul, number 22. Hey, DJ Zed, that is a dreamy track. I like the digital Zenscape sound, man. Groovy, rock on. Welcome back, folks. So I talked a lot about a thing I did at Home Depot just now, and I apologize. That was 45 minutes of me rambling about stuff. But, there's a lot going on in the world, and ending Asian hate is something we can all do a little something about, right? Like the thoughts and prayers, great. Upgrade that to an awesome if you're really praying as opposed to just sort of bullshitting and saying that you're praying, because that's the problem with thoughts and prayers. When the person's just saying thoughts and prayers, my thoughts and prayers are with you, and they go home and what they pray about in terms of the words that they actually chant or say or in their head or whatever may not even get remembered to touch on that. Or they don't even say a prayer. Like, what's up with that? People do that, and that's crazy. That's just rude. Okay. But real prayer, as I've said before, and I'll talk about again, I'm sure, there's something there that's part of the manifesting. And especially if you couple it with meditation. Okay. 90-day sketch-a-thon. Here's the jam. And wow, we're already at 45 minutes, so this will be way less than I envisioned originally. But it is what it is. I gotta say what I gotta say. It's freeform. It's what the goddess muse drops in my head is what comes out when I hit broadcast. Which is why I wish I could just go straight to live the moment I sit down and add the picture and the blurbs and the hashtags at the very end. Sprecher, if you're spying on me, if you're listening for audio, if you're collecting things for your suggestion box, there's an idea. Give us that as an option. Up front, it kind of boggles my mind a little bit and slows me down. But there's always a moment when I feel ready to do the podcast, and my brain's like, the antenna of improv, the improv antenna is humming, like go. And then having to stop and think in text and type on either a virtual or the mechanical keyboard causes static and makes that antenna sort of go, oh, am I powering down? Am I supposed to turn off? What's going on? But I digress. 90-day sketch, which is what I set out to talk about, because I am enthusiastic about it. It's a gimmick, for sure, but it's my gimmick. It's this show's gimmick, and it's real AF. Here's the backstory. As a kid, as you may recall, I had crazy, fanciful notions of being an entertainment mogul. I knew I wanted to, be on the radio. I didn't really think very specifically about, would I be hosting my own show, or am I just practicing for when I get interviewed? Am I, what? But I just knew being on the radio was cool. Here we are. Podcast is the do-it-from-home solution. I also, and this is weird, I loved, but never bought, comic books. Whenever I was near a comic book store and could get away with popping in, because, you're not your own person until you get your first personal conveyance, non-motorized conveyance cycle thing, by your first bicycle or scooter or whatever, those fucking hover bikes and whatever they've got nowadays. These kids with their floating skateboards. But I would always pop into the comic book store and it was like being in an art gallery. I almost didn't want to touch the art, right? The way you don't touch art in an art gallery. But the covers of each of these books, each of these comic books, was always, I was just in awe. It was, like a kid in a candy store. And being a comic book artist or a manga artist or a sketch artist felt like something that I aspired to, but had severe, crippling mental blockages about. Almost as bad as writing, but slightly worse, because writing you have to do in real life, you're forced. You can't not write in the long run. So it's one of those hobbyist things that I was always enthusiastic about and did a little bit in the daydreaming, stolen moments of school time, but never like that kid in that movie that becomes, the hero and draws their way into a solution, which is totally the story I want to create. One of the flagship characters I want to make is a kid who hates the world and hates themselves and gets into drawing because of some kooky uncle that's somehow related to Mr. Zeppo and gets into drawing their own comic book heroes, as a way to escape all the bad things in their life. And then falls into their world, a la, thank you, Never-Ending Story. I'm sure there's something that is the precursor to Never-Ending Story, but in terms of postmodern living memory, like obviously this was a seminal bit of art that inspired other storytellers and other artists. Never-Ending Story, man, pow. So my multiverse is sort of like a fan fiction multiverse, like. I want to, and I don't know how egregiously approaching, because all rights are reserved by all original artists always, full stop, right? In my disclaimers, I never want to be accused of stealing, but I do want to homage and fan fiction, and blur the line between original fiction and fan fiction work, if that makes sense. I want to bridge the gap between a world that I'm creating and the various fictional art worlds from various platforms, from various artists that I've found inspiring. Not the least of which is, untold cartoons of both DC and Marvel, and the multitude of the independents that I browsed, but never had the disposable income to collect and shop. And I got burnt on collectibles as a kid. There's a whole nother story. We'll make a whole special episode about that. But I have a stupid, irritating story about getting scammed and cheated out of some decent baseball cards and out of just a lot of baseball cards, and feeling like I don't understand why this is important and not caring about collecting them, but I've been seduced into it somehow because. And deep down, I think some scientist somewhere said this, and I kind of get it. There's a part of our brain, you know how they say we have a lizard part of our brain and an early mammalian part of our brain and a advanced sort of simian part of our brain, and then there's the human layer. The early mammalian, you can kind of call the squirrel brain, because really, really early mammals were all very, very squirrel-like if you really think about it. And we all share things in common, and squirrels are adorable, and we sometimes act like them, in people form. But squirrels are hoarders, they love to, collect. They collect the things they love to collect, and you can go into depth studying that and go mad. But the squirrel part of our brain, originally for survival purposes, and then because we can become mildly neurotic in a non-toxic way about stuff, which just sits there as an invitation to let it get toxic. We can get addicted to the meaningless endorphin rush of finding a thing, claiming it, establishing ownership, and storing it away. Ultimately, that's got everything to do with living on the edge of death and finding some food that will keep, nuts, etc., and being a scavenger survivor, and keeping useful things. Food and useful things, right? When we were literally the multitude of lifetimes where we were all the animals that evolved into whatever our final evolutionary, parenting source point is. However Lucy became Lucy, there was an infinity of lifetimes, genetically speaking, that all carried forward this progressively useful, but also potentially sort of cynically meaningless addiction that can get a little toxic. Because there's people who are trash, and that's completely, what the fuck? Completely useless. I digress. where are we? Sketch-a-thon, 90 days. I have upgraded what was initially going to be a 30-day sketch challenge. Because my brain, I realized creatively I needed a little bit more structure in my life, in this vague void of distilled time dilating. So like I experience more the topography of time having transitioning from moments of flowing very quickly to moments of peaking into stillness and moments of dilated time isolation, right? And then you mine back out into the rush of like catching up with that spent time, etc., which is weird. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, like time is an experiential phenomena, and if you tune into how you experience it and the sensations of it, your acuity for tuning into the various gear shift adjustments to our relationship to phenomenologically monitoring time, as it were, because like it doesn't exist, but it also tangibly is brought into existence by our own existence. That's a weird part about the universe. We haven't fully articulated into mainstream understanding. But see, the universe doesn't exist independent of us because we are the universe being the universe, right? The universe is the universe being us. So it can't exist independent of us because that's like the appendix existing independent of the rest of the body vessel and going, aha! I am more important than the rest of the body. The body just is there for me to do as I please with. No, appendix, you're a silly fucking appendix. We are just microbes in the cul-de-sac of the appendix. And we are meant to do a special job. A special job which includes such crazy things as bringing art into the world, as opposed to working at some tedious desk job or other manual labor slave job. We got to do what we got to do. Not everyone... There is that weird, potentially true thing. There's this duality. Not everyone can be an artist. Everyone can be an artist. There are moments in time when I feel each is true. And this is one of those like, well, one is up and one is down, isn't it? And does up exist and down not exist? Does down exist exclusively and up just a figment of my imagination? No, they both exist. They co-create each other because they're co-relational in their defining of themselves and one another. Everyone can be an artist. Not everyone will be. Not everyone will find joy in it. Not everyone will find success in it. Not everyone will find... Do you know how some people can be really, really good at something? Whether it's art or lovemaking or... math or whatever, they can be really, really, really good at it, but actually have no joyous passion about it. They're just functionally excellent at it, but they almost couldn't care less and they would rather be better at something else. That can happen, right? So there's multiple things going on. And when it comes to crafts or arts and crafts and arts, I think crafts shouldn't be dismissed, but we can do a whole episode diatribe about that. When it comes to arts and crafts, I feel that it is, that's a delicate subject because that crux, that intersection of everyone can be a craftsperson / an artisan, which I think artisan is the proper conjugation of artist, artisan. A person is an artist. People can be artisans. I don't know. A person can be an artisan too. I don't know. Whatever. My point is, that's where like the imposter syndrome blockage problem, I think, really originates from. And it's something that I've been wrestling with on multiple levels. Fundamentally, my life's tragedy is that I suffer from tremendous writer's block as an individual sitting at a desk by myself. If I were to be sitting at a desk across from someone that I could engage in theater, improv, writer's room collaborative development exercises with, then stuff flows. Stuff I would never have come up with by myself flows out of my fingers. And it boggles my mind. It has literally made me weep at times. That because, purely incidentally, I had sat down to try to write something. I think this is like a homework assignment back when I was in college. I had this really vivid memory. And there was a girlfriend at the time, someone I was dating at the time. I think I was over at their place and we were going to do some theater work together. And I was also like, oh, I have this thought. It stemmed from the complex coalescing of being into them, being nervous about hanging out with them, talking about other things with them, and my brain being more artistically activated when in the presence of someone else who is equally interested, mutually interested in collaborative artistic development. The tragedy of this pandemic lockdown for me has been sort of a microcosm of that macrocosm issue from my life in general. Not to bitch and moan. You know, I can be accused of being a salty dog that bitch and moans too much in a sort of complacent way, but here are the facts. Lockdown happened, and I was both single and not involved with dating anyone in at any level or capacity. Right at the actual issuance of the lockdown, and independent of that, both before and after during the lockdown, I just had whatever interested parties may have wanted to get to know me. It just so happened that, to the best of my knowledge, none of them were also artists that were also interested in collaborative work in the weird way that I'm hoping and aspiring to discover someday. But that's a matter for another time. It's not. I'm not interested in that so much as that I had to wrestle and confront with this problem of my own blockages and pick it apart, analyze it, because every artist can rationalize any kind of blockage. And the first critique of my statement that I'm a collaborative artist, therefore my problem is I need other people to work the best work that I can make. I understand this is a weird catch-22. I know I've proven to myself with others in having, in the academic world and in the amateur world and even in small scale on the professional level, that my best work does come out of me in a very intense flow state when I am two or more willing, interested participants play along with some of the weird, interesting, intuition-based, collaborative things. What's the right term here? Exercises, development tools, which are really sort of things you do, as opposed to objects that I've experimentally tinkered with and developed in my head in isolation over the years, because I'm obsessed with this concept of meta collaborative development of art through the invocation of a sort of spiritual energy flow, right? Not to sound sanctimonious, but whenever two or more people are gathered together, so it says in various holy books, the spirit is there with them. Now, that of course is intended to be about studying whatever texts. But I think that might be an organic truth, right? I think that one of the glorious things about theater is that no matter how you slice it, it has to be functionally, by form and by necessity, by the nature of the fact that it is a human endeavor that requires multiple people doing many things at once, with different specialities and the need for some of those people to bridge those gaps, bridge those areas of focus, etc. It's a hyper collaborative art form. Even when people go about it in a very top-down, dictatorial, tyrannical kind of way, you're still fundamentally collaborating. There's, of course, different ways of doing it, different open and sort of closed systems of the work. I digress. That's all great, right? But the strongest, most cutting, most immediate critique of whenever I've had this deep conversation with others, seeking deep, real, honest counsel about what to do about the fact that I find myself unable to attract, engage, and retain willing participants as a passionate amateur with the aspirational goal of working together to bootstrap ourselves into a place of becoming profitable, incorporating as an artistic, corporate endeavor and producing our art at exponentially larger scales, but starting for free. That's a really hard pitch, right? And everyone's comes at me with an almost painful cliche. You got to start by yourself. Start with what you've got. Start with what you can do on your own. Build it, and others will come. And I've often sort of argued internally with myself in an unhelpful way that I've proven I've proven enough, and I've somehow shoulda, coulda, woulda already found that group of collaborators, and that I'm cursed, or maybe I just suck. All the imposter syndrome things kick in. 2021 was a reckoning for me. To cut to the quick of it and get to the end of this episode, because I really have rambled on. It's about to be 66 minutes and 66 seconds in a hot second. Not that technically that will happen because of the way the clock works here, but that's a whole nother story. 2020 was a reckoning for me because with wild hope, against all odds, I thought, well, everyone's getting forced to lock down. Maybe I'll find collaborators online. Admittedly, I didn't try very hard, but I was also sort of hoping that people would be attracted to me, brought to me through the passive, magic of the law of attraction. And it sort of worked, but also I didn't. What I was contending with at a deeper level was that cutting, that incisive observation, that criticism of you still need to do it by yourself. You still need to show your work. Prove that you can do any and all of the things that you would, to be a leader, to be the center of the nexus point of the vortex of a triangle of collaboration, to make up terminology on the fly here, which is the way I think of myself. In the times that I've been able to do it with others in terms of working together to make some piece of art, I ultimately, figuratively, procedurally, in terms of what my brain seems to be doing, we'll have to backfill that because that was a pause for a coughing fit. What was I saying? Sorry about that. That was a weird pause. It snuck up on me. I've tested and verified enough of my abstract, and in terms of the way I do it, for me, a lot of it is intuition based. So it's difficult to describe, but sitting around a table with a group of people and learning how to collaborate and tune into a strong creative flow so that words that neither I nor any of the other collaborative participants would have probably come up with on our own come out of me and fall onto the page and become, and then grow more as everyone else takes them in and gives their feedback, and I as a sort of, just as a funnel, a vortex, in a torus, right? The circle of collaborators shares with me their input, and I compress it down in some process that's impossible to describe internally, and then from that flows out what some have called bullshit, but flows out new content. Okay, so the reckoning of 2021 was I was, for all intents and purposes, unable to find anyone else, or preventing myself from finding anyone else, not trying hard enough to find anyone else, etc., etc., etc. I'm not angry or bitter about that, but I did have to contend with that potentiality, because emotions well up in potentia and then burst out into actuality, and I had to mitigate that before that bubble of potential negative emotionality burst, and then process the think through. Not so much whatever that might mean, that here I am and I'm encountering this prolonged isolation, and there's nothing else that I can do but challenge myself to do any and or all of the artistic creative endeavors that I long to be doing with others in this theoretical collaborative matrix that I've designed in my head, and just do it by myself. Because if I don't, then what can nothing will get done, right? And what claim do I have to being an artist, really? Because an artist is in the doing of it, no matter what else happens, in my opinion of it. So whether it's in a little tiny amateur storefront or in a big giant professional, glamorous theater, what makes it a profoundly professional, I don't know what third alliterative word I could use there, but artistically inspiring. Like, to me, professionalism is more than just about the individual's conduct in terms of propriety and appropriateness. It's like there's got to be a wow factor and a factor of inspiration. It inspires artistically. And emotionally, and all those things, and achieves the goals of the artist in a way that is above and beyond the sort of everyday norm. Otherwise, because there has to be, despite the truth in wanting to endorse and encourage and support anyone and everyone that wants to pick up art, there is a line in the metaphorical sand of reality in which not everything that is rendered qualifies as art, and that's a tough thing, and that can be hard on the individual who rendered it, right? Whatever style or media or platform. And like with the original idea of podcasting, journaling, audio blogging, and podcasting, my autodidactic journey through teaching myself how to correctly and appropriately read and interpret the tarot and other oracle systems, which has been sitting on the back burner for quite some time, in an active way. Like, I'm still doing some of the footwork there, but I just haven't been recording any episodes. And I took down all the previous episodes to sort of refurbish and reorganize them. I'm a draft artist. Whatever media I'm in, for example, I just sketched something this morning to get back to the real point of the thing. And I'm worked up. Okay, so I sketched something this morning, and it's not complete. I don't think it's a complete sketch. It's not even very good. But I'm going to come back to it and do another pass and do some alterations, do some changes, try to make it better, right? Because I don't consider myself a professional pencil sketch artist. I'm an enthusiastic amateur that wants to re-educate himself in an autodidactic way. I love that word. And is explicitly cobbling together from various sources, an augmented, very much assisted by others and the other people's professional output about learning how to draw. I'm going to do my own. It was going to be 30 days. Now it's going to be 90 days challenge to do a little bit of sketching every day, plus some actual like lesson work. And I started this, whatever it was, whenever I first started talking about it on the podcast, a few days before that. And in that time, I've drafted up my own little morning ritual for my almost daily doodle. And here's the thing. Here's the important part. And thank you for enduring all the prolonged rambling. Excuse me, now I've got some hiccups and trying not to... Huzzah for lack of professionalism there. Okay, so the Almost Daily Doodle is going to be a live stream available to viewers over on Behance, I believe it is pronounced, which I'm not ready. Don't have links to drop officially, but I will. I'm revamping and redoing because I did a soft sort of, what's going on? How does this work? And now I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to make hard decisions and I'm really going to set it up. I'm going to have a little profile over on Behance and a portfolio of my actual professional, what I hope is professional level art, whenever that comes around. But in the middle of that, because I don't consider myself a professional artist, period. Although I've intuitively done a few digital paintings that are like, well, I don't know if they would look any different X many months or years down the road when I would consider myself a professional artist, because I love the way they look now, and that's that. But in terms of sketching, I'm purposefully, mindfully, on purpose, putting myself through my own improvised, intuitively self-taught, and that's what autodidactic really sort of represents for me. I'd have to look up the definition to read you the legit, like, technical, but I don't have it. And I'm not going to right this second. We'll do it later. But my own invented, self-taught, daily, almost daily, because you need time off or else you burn out and you start not caring. Sketch-a-thon challenge that is sort of like my boot camp class to get myself up to working skill set that is better and beyond my native intuitive, because I do think I sometimes hit a lucky sort of beginner's luck, like, oh, that looks really cool, but it's only half a drawing, right? Because it's only an element of something and it's never ever complete, and the rest of it's like, nope, don't know how to, I have no idea how to like do the other things that I would want them there. I can see it. Maybe I start out and I made a really cool horizon, right? Or the side of a hill. But then I'll be like, I don't know how to put in the foreground trees and the river and it doesn't all make sense. But I know that I can get there because anyone can be an artist. Anyone can practice the spiritual practice of creating art. And honestly, I think that when you look at it from that perspective, everyone kind of maybe should, because even if you never endeavor to make it a professional, the other thing about professional that's the real hard line in the metaphorical sand is that you're getting paid for it. Someone, because they have capital and investment money and or a strong revenue stream, is paying you for your time and your skill set, right? As opposed to you're doing it and you're hoping it'll sell. There's another term for, I don't know, maybe professional artist. I don't know. There should be a third term for between amateur and professional for the artist that, I guess that's freelance. The artist that's like, I'm a freelance fine artist. I've made 3 paintings this year, and those sold for so much that even if I never lift a finger for another 2 years, I'm golden. And I don't want to sound like a jackass, but I would love to achieve that. And that's something that in some doing it my own weird abstract combination of different kind of platforms sort of way, I've always wanted to do and have never done. It's the thing I've feared the most. In fact, if I were to be really harsh and blunt about this dimension of my life, my entire life has been running away from doing the things I want to do the most, and trying to find other cool things that I might be able to learn how to do that are, for whatever reason, psychologically less intimidating. Like and I'm one of those weirdos that's always had too many ambitions, right? I've always wanted to be an archaeologist, architect that paints and runs a theater company. That's insane. You're lucky if you get a really great job at a chain box store and you rise up the ranks and you become a manager, and it's in the vein of the industry, the artistic industry that you really want. That's the hard truth about most artists who were born artists in terms of what they want to be. But I digress. A public discourse jazz artist is also something I've always wanted to be. I've always wanted to pontificate in public and be comically taken seriously, right? Like a comedian, like some kind of late night TV show host. I want to be taken seriously, but with a sense of humor about my take on the world, because it's a little bit outside the norm, but it also understands and acknowledges the norm, and it also understands and acknowledges the fringe. Okay, I've been rambling for 81 minutes and 30 seconds, and I'm going to stop right there because it's done. Da-da-da, sparkles and fanfare and trumpets. The 90-day sketch-a-thon challenge has been announced. Technically, I've already been doing it. I haven't officially launched the gallery. It's in a soft opening, and it doesn't look very good. It's not appropriately organized right now. But there will be, for your viewing pleasure, a growing collection of draft work, which will be presented in the form of time-lapse microfilms. There'll be little films showing you the different stages, and then there'll be the final work. And hopefully, if it's a hand-drawn pencil sketch on paper, it'll be a high-def photo, right? Displaying the paper on some sort of, like, look at me, I'm an artist, sort of real-life background. Because I've decided flatbed scans aren't cutting it. So I'm also going to update my NFT gallery, which is where I'm going to go to share exclusive, elite examples of my work that will be available for sale. So I'm going to completely revamp what I've posted, where I was sort of drafting up my approach to it, right? As I say, I'm a draft artist. I've hit a critical mass of understanding. I had to learn the websites, understand what it looks like, how it works, what happens when I do this, what happens when I do that, and then get motivated, right? So I humbly invite you to join me, and humbly invite you to not only support this show, but support that artwork too. Because it's not just me being weird and like wanting to be an artist. It's part and parcel, and it helps solve the biggest problem of like my writing, right? Which is like, I can't find collaborative writers. I'm not ready yet. The universe has not approved in spiritual cosmic terms. The universe says, you're on the right path, because cool things are happening. Like, I'm not saying, oh, is me, I'm such a miserable failure. I know that I'm whatever you call someone that just hasn't been discovered yet. That's an acting related term. It originates from being discovered by film producers and by Broadway producers. But I haven't been discovered by the audience yet, right? Like, you guys, you hardcore followers that are downloading episodes on the daily. Some days I kind of like weep a little bit. Like, I get misty. I'm getting misty right now because, bless you, thank you, I love you. I get up every day and I think about what can I do to make this better and more interesting. And I know that I'm failing on the making each episode shorter and tighter and more compact and easy to get through. But at the same time, I'm being really, really authentically me. Like, if we were friends and we had phone calls, this would be going on until you told me to fuck off and be like, okay, dude, we've been talking for about 2 hours. I gotta go. My kid is crying in the background and we gotta run to the thing. because I love sharing. And when, I wish this were an actual phone call. One day this show will evolve to where like almost every day I take a phone call from somebody, because I could be on the air all day long, especially if I have a group of people around me in the studio and online. And I don't have to do 100% of the talking. I can just do like my apple slice share of the talking, and I don't thrash my voice. But anyways, here we are, friends. Over the course of the next days, weeks, and months, you're going to see, hopefully, the best of, and listen, I'm the first one to get self-critical and be like, this is shit. I just doodled my first little draft of what is meant to be a concept design to a sort of comically weird-looking future car for my comically weird dystopian future book series, the flagship title of which is 0 Hour, of which there are some sample chapters you can go read totally for free, because I'm not selling you anything on my podcast, over at wattpad.com/Mr. Zeppo, or search for Mr. Zeppo, because there might be some weird word file, chapter thing container /bucket thing, which I can't remember. It might be user, it might be member, it might be writer, I don't know. But Wattpad, search for Mr. Zeppo, you should find me. So every day when I make my delicious, not coffee, the thing I drink in the morning now instead of coffee beverage, which, by the way, is one of the other new gimmicks we've been working on for the show. I'm not going to ramble about that for 45 minutes now. But I've noticed that I've got like about a minute and a half, however long it takes for a kettle of water to boil. Because to make this awesome, delicious, mostly mushrooms, only a little bit of coffee, crazy cocktail of not alcohol, but rather something healthy for me to drink in the morning, however long it takes for the kettle to boil, as if I was boiling tea. It's like that. I don't put it through the coffee maker. I guess I could do it in French press style, but it all dissolves anyways. And that whiskey thing is super fun. But I was really annoyed with what to do with that time. I'm not annoyed. I was like searching for something to do with that time, because I was annoyed with standing at the kettle waiting for it to boil. And I was annoyed with, like, I didn't want to go upstairs and get lost into something upstairs, because then I noticed, that's how you accidentally burn the house down, trying to make tea or coffee with your tea kettle. And I had to, but I had to fill the time with something. And my default was, and don't judge me, it's one on my list of things that I'm going to change about my life, but I got to work on other things first. But I would step outside and smoke a cigarette. And that's like, obviously not a choice I want to keep making. So it hit me. It was just enough time to crank out a little sketch and be like, it's done. I made a little something. And it may look like shit, but I can come back and fix it later. But I finished it, and it's a fun little challenge. And there, the 30-day sketch-a-day challenge, I still haven't settled on a title, but I think it's funny to like call it slightly different things every time. Thus it was born. And then I decided, as I've been updrafting that ritual, I realized, oh my God, there's some really cool things I could do here. And as I reconnected with some of the digital apps that I had thought, I should make pictures for my book by myself, because I have yet to find the right artist. The right artist will come. That's why I talk about it on my podcast. Someday, in the not too distant future, someone listening to this podcast is going to be like, that is a cool idea. And you know what? I do want to have my name on their books when they get published professionally and get paid for having helped illustrate that book. Yeah, that's awesome. I like what they're doing. Maybe it's happening now. I don't know. But when it does, I'll be ready, because I wasn't ready before and I needed to. And I am now, I think. Namaste for that epiphany and that realization. And there's so much more I got to explain, but instead of explaining it and dragging this episode out any longer, I'm gonna show you. So join me, and it'll all clarify itself within like a week or 3. And I know that I said the same sort of thing about that updrafting project about turning past episodes into the multiplex edition. That's still on the back burner. I'm going to get there. But I realized that just doing that and spending the oodles of time isn't immediately going to help diversify my streams of income. Because that's what this hustle's all about, right? Like, nobody does a podcast to go into debt. People do a podcast to grow an audience and build a community and generate revenue, right? There's nothing wrong with that. So thank you guys, because that dream is slowly building some momentum. They say it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. Well, friends, technically, as far as the podcast is concerned, whether you just recently joined or you've been listening since day one, as a community, as a little audience experiment, we are in the middle of our 4th year of the 10-year journey to becoming an overnight success. So thank you for being a part of it. And as I like to say, don't be shy. You've heard me say it before. I won't be so redundant to say it again. But that's a real, honest, open door invitation. Obviously, reasonable privacy limits apply. But stay tuned, folks, because not only am I going to be posting more content over on Wattpad, because I'm really feeling full steam. I'm going to be bringing to you more original digital art over on Behance for free, just to share with you the process of defining my illustrated literary world. I don't know if it's going to be a comic book or a manga or an illustrated graphic novel or what you're going to call it, but at some point there's going to be a thing you can get on the app market, and it's going to be cool. I gotta go. Thanks for listening. Be good ambulatory vessels for consciousness. And remember, folks, healing is the answer. Everybody go make art.